Anglicization or anglicization is the process of converting anything to more English norms. Social and economic anglicization was an objective of the English crown in the Celtic regions of the United Kingdom, in Ireland, Scotland and Wales. Social anglicization was also a feature in some sectors of society under the British Empire. Anglicization of language. In terms of language, anglicization is a policy of use of the English language, such as was one of the causes contributing to the Boer War. The adoption of English as a personal, preferred language is another form of anglicization. Calvin Veltman, following the methods of analysis developed in Quebec, Canada for establishing rates of language shift, uses the term to refer to the practice of individuals in minority language groups who cease using their mother tongue as their usual, preferred language and adopt English instead. When such individuals continue to speak their mother tongue, they are referred to as English dominant bilinguals, and when they cease to do so, they are referred to as English monolinguals. Rates of anglicization may be calculated by comparing the number of people who usually speak English to the total number of people in any given minority language group. Anglicization of non-English language vocabulary and names. Anglicization within a language is adapting oral or written elements of any other language into a form that is more comprehensible to a speaker of English, or in general, of altering something so that it becomes English in form or character. It is also called anglification, anglifying, or Englishing. Anglicization of loan words. The term anglicization sometimes refers to the process of altering the pronunciation or spelling of a foreign word when it is borrowed into English. Personal names may also be anglicized. This was common for names of antiquity or of foreign heads of state, and it has also been common among immigrants to English-speaking countries. There have also been cases of deliberate change during periods of international stress or war. For example, Battenberg was deliberately changed to Mountbatten. Non-English words may be anglicized by changing their form and pronunciation to something more familiar to English speakers. For example, the Latin word obscenus/obscenus/ has been imported into English in the modified form obscene/obscene/. Changing endings in this manner is especially common, and can be frequently seen when foreign words are imported into any language. For example, the English word damsel is an anglicization of the Old French demoiselle, modern demoiselle, meaning young lady. Another form of anglicizing is the inclusion of a foreign article as part of a noun, such as alkali from the Arabic alkili. Anglicization of non-English place names. Some foreign place names are commonly anglicized in English as English exonyms. Examples include the Italian cities of Roma, Napoli and Milano, known in English as Rome, Naples and Milan; the German cities of Cologne, Cologne, München, Munich, and, more subtly, Hanover, the Danish city of Copenhagen, Copenhagen, the Swedish city of Göteborg, Gothenburg, the Dutch city of Den Haag, The Hague, the Spanish city of Sevilla, Seville, the Egyptian city of Al-Qahira, Cairo, and the Moroccan city of Marrakech, which had been called Morocco in medieval English literature and is renamed Marrakesh in modern-day English writings. Such anglicization was once more common. Nearly all cities and people discussed in English literature up to the mid-19th century had their names anglicized. In the late 19th century, however, use of non-English names in English began to become more common. When dealing with languages that use the same Latin alphabet as English, names are now more usually written in English as they happen in their local language, sometimes even with diacritical marks that do not normally appear in English. With languages that use non-Latin alphabets, such as the Arabic, Cyrillic, Greek, Korean Hangul, and other alphabets, a direct transliteration is typically used, which is then often pronounced according to English rules. Non-Latin-based languages may use standard romanization systems, such as Japanese Romaji or Chinese, Mandarin, Pinyin. The Japanese and Chinese names are spelled in English following these spellings with some common exceptions, usually without Chinese tone marks and without Japanese macrons for long vowels, chongqing to chongqing, shijiazhuang to shijiazhuang, both in China, Kyoto to Kyoto, In Japan, de-anglicization has become a matter of national pride in some places and especially in regions that were once under colonial rule, where vestiges of colonial domination are a sensitive subject. Following centuries of English rule in Ireland, Douglas Hyde delivered an argument for de-anglicization before the Irish National Literary Society in Dublin, the 25th of November 1892. When we speak of the necessity for de-anglicizing the Irish nation, we mean it, not as a protest against imitating what is best in the English people, for that would be absurd, but rather to show the folly of neglecting what is Irish, and hastening to adopt, pell-mell, and, indiscriminately, everything that is English, simply because it is English. Despite its status as an official language, the Irish language has been reduced to a minority language in Ireland due to centuries of English rule, as is the case in North America where their indigenous languages have been replaced by that of the colonists. In the process of removing the signs of their colonial past, anglicized names have been officially discouraged in many places. Ireland's Kingstown, named by King George IV, reverted to its original Irish name of Dunloghair in 1920. Even before Irish independence in 1922, India's Bombay is now Mumbai, even though this is not the oldest local name, seat eponymy of Mumbai, and Bombay is still commonly used in the city. Calcutta is Kolkata and Madras is Chennai. Bangladesh's Dhaka is Dhaka. Many Chinese endonyms have become de-anglicized. Canton is now more commonly called Guangzhou, and Peking is generally referred to as Beijing, although this reflected a name change from Beiping, Peiping, to Beijing, Peking, with the de-anglicization of the name taking place after the name change to reflect a pronunciation change in Mandarin. In Scotland, many places names in Scots Gaelic were anglicized, often, but not always, accidentally due to Ordnance Survey mappers not being native speakers of Gaelic. Often the etymology of a place name is lost or obscured, such as in the case of King Gussie, from Sinagi Youth Sage, the heads of the pine forest. In other cases, established anglicized names have remained in common use where there is no national pride at stake. This is the case with Ghent, Gent, or Gand, Munich, München, Cologne, Cologne, Vienna, Wern, Naples, Napoli, Rome, Roma, Milan, Milano, Athens, Athena, Moscow, Moskva, St. Petersburg, Sankt Peterburg, Warsaw, Warsaw, Prague, Praha, Bucharest, Bucuresti, Belgrade, Belgrade, Lisbon, Lisboa, and other European cities whose names have been familiar in their anglicized forms for centuries. However, the de-anglicized names now often appear as an alternative on maps, in airports, etc. Often the English name reflects a French origin, sometimes unchanged from French, for example Cologne, sometimes changed slightly, for example Vienna, Vienne, Venice, Venice. The English city name for the Czech capital, Prague, is taken with spelling unaltered from the French name for the city, itself descended from the Latin name for the city, Praga, which had been borrowed from an earlier Czech name, predating the /g/h/ shift. Sometimes a place name can appear anglicized, but is not, such as when the form being used in English is an older name that has now been changed. For example, Turin in the Piedmont province of Italy was named Turin in the original Piedmontese language, but is now officially known as Torino in Italian. English language media can sometimes overcompensate for this in the mistaken belief that the anglicized name was imposed by English speakers and is cultural domination. The International Olympic Committee made the choice to regard the city officially as Torino throughout the 2006 Winter Olympics. The English and French name for Florence in Italy is closer to the original name in Latin, Florentia, than is the modern Italian name, Firenze. In the past, the names of people from other language areas were anglicized to a higher extent than today. This was the general rule for names of Latin or classical Greek origin. Today, the anglicized name forms are often retained for the more common persons, like Aristotle for Aristoteles, and Adrian or, later, Hadrian for Hadrianus. However, less well-known persons from the antiquity are now often given their full name, In the nominative case, for royalty, the anglicization of personal names was a general phenomenon, especially until recently. Charles for Carlos, Caroli, and Cal, Frederick for Friedrich or Frederick, etc. Anglicization is still the rule for popes, including recent ones, Pope John Paul II instead of Ioann Paulus II, Pope Benedict XVI instead of Benedictus XVI. Medieval Scottish names. The anglicization of medieval Scottish names consists of changing them from a form consistent with Scottish Gaelic to the Scots language, which is an Anglic language. For instance, the king known in Scottish Gaelic as Domnall mac Corsantin, Domnall son of Corsantin, is known in Scots as Donald II of Scotland, son of Constantine I of Scotland. During the time in which there were large influxes of immigrants from Europe to the United States and United Kingdom during the 19th and 20th centuries, the names of many immigrants were changed either by immigration officials, as demonstrated in The Godfather Part 2, or personal choice. French immigrants to the United States, both those of Huguenot and those of French-Canadian background, often accommodated those unfamiliar with French pronunciations and spellings by altering their surnames in either of two ways. Spellings were changed to fit the traditional pronunciation. Pariser became Pariso, Boucher became Bushy, Mayhew became Mayhew, or pronunciations were changed to fit the spelling. Benoit, pronounced Benoit, became /Bnt/Benedict. In some cases, it could go either way. Gagny, pronounced Anne, became /Ashna/or Gonya, or something only slightly similar. Brasser became Bursaw. Most Irish names have been anglicized. A good example of this can be seen in the surnames of many Irish families. For example, O'Brien has often become O'Brien, O'Rourke became Roland, O'Neill became O'Neill, and some surnames like O'Galchapare may be shortened to just Gallagher. Likewise, native Scottish names were altered, such as Somhail to Sawley, Macgillian to Maclean, and Macaoy to Mackay. Many Welsh names have also been altered, such as Ap Hywel to Powell, or Ap Sion to Jones. German names have also been anglicized, from Licht to Light, due to the German immigration waves during times of political instability in the late 19th century and early 20th century. A somewhat different special case was the politically motivated change of dynasty name in 1917 by the royal family of the United Kingdom from the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha to the House of Windsor. Incidentally, Saxe-Coburg is an anglicization of Saxon-Coburg. In India, amongst others, a lot of Bengali surnames have been anglicized. Banerjee, Chatterjee and Mukherjee are anglicized forms of Bandhapadi, Chattopadhyay and Mukherjee respectively. The anglicization of a personal name now usually depends on the preferences of the bearer. Name changes are less common today for Europeans emigrating to the United States than they are for people originating in East Asian countries, except for Japan, which no longer has large-scale emigration. For instance, Xiangyun might be anglicized to Sean as the pronunciation is similar, though Sean, or Sean, is Irish and is a Gaelicization of the Anglo-Norman gene, which itself has been anglicized to John. Ethnonyms. In some cases ethnonyms may be anglicized from a term in another language, either the language of the group described or the language of another people. Anglicization within other non-English languages. A more recent linguistic development is anglicization of other languages, in which words are borrowed from English. Such a word is known as an anglicism. With the rise in Anglophone media and global spread of British and American cultures in the 20th and 21st centuries, many English terms have entered popular usage in other tongues. Technology-related English words like internet and computer are particularly common across the globe, as there are no pre-existing words for them. English words are sometimes imported verbatim, and sometimes adapted to the importing language in a process similar to anglicization. In languages with non-Latin alphabets, these borrowed words can be written in the Latin alphabet anyway, resulting in a text made up of a mixture of scripts. Other times they are transliterated. Transliteration of English and other foreign words into Japanese generally uses the katakana script. In some countries such anglicization is seen as relatively benign, and the use of English words may even take on a chic aspect. In Japan, marketing products for the domestic market often involves using English or pseudo-English brand names and slogans. In other countries, anglicization is seen much more negatively, and there are efforts by public interest groups and governments to reverse the trend. For example, the Académie Française in France insists on the use of French neologisms to describe technological inventions in place of imported English terms. Mother tongue, they are referred to as English dominant bilinguals, and when they cease to do so, they are referred to as English monolinguals. Rates of anglicization may be calculated by comparing the number of people who usually speak English to the total number of people in any given minority language group. Anglicization of non-English language vocabulary and names. Anglicization within a language is adapting oral or written elements of any other language into a form that is more comprehensible to a speaker of English, or in general, of altering something so that it becomes English in form or character. It is also called anglification, anglifying, or Englishing. Anglicization of loan words. The term anglicization sometimes refers to the process of altering the pronunciation or spelling of a foreign word when it is borrowed into English. Personal names may also be anglicized. This was common for names of antiquity or of foreign heads of state, and it has also. Anglicization or anglicization is the process of converting anything to more English norms. Social and economic anglicization was an objective of the English crown in the Celtic regions of the United Kingdom, in Ireland, Scotland and Wales. Social anglicization was also a feature in some sectors of society under the British Empire. Anglicization of language. In terms of language, anglicization is a policy of use of the English language, such as was also been common among immigrants to English-speaking countries. There have also been cases of deliberate change during periods of international stress or war. For example, Battenberg was deliberately changed to Mountbatten. Non-English words may be anglicized by changing their form and pronunciation to something more familiar to English speakers. For example, the Latin word obscenus/obscenus/ has been imported into English in the modified form obscene/. One of the causes contributing to the Boer War. The adoption of English as a personal, preferred language is another form of anglicization. Calvin Veltman, following the methods of analysis developed in Quebec, Canada for establishing rates of language shift, uses the term to refer to the practice of individuals in minority language groups who cease using their mother tongue as their usual, preferred language and adopt English instead. When such individuals continue to speak their